Yeah, fine.
Okay.
How are you, ma'am?
Teacher.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Right. Okay. Hope you're all doing good. Hope you're all here tonight. And I received a message from Sayuri-san that she will not be able to join today. And do you have any idea about Miss Keiko? She's not participating to the classes recently.
She's sick.
Okay. Is that so? Okay. I will contact her. I send her a personal message then. Thank you. Okay. Right. So we will move into the lecture today. So hope you all received the lecture note which I sent you yesterday. And apart from that, I sent you I prepared a academic schedule for the year for this year, and hope you received that too. Right. So we are in the phase of, we are discussing the Vedic civilization, and under the Vedic civilization, we were discussing about the Vedic literature, right? So I will give you a quick introduction, what we were discussed so far. So when we were studying the Vedic literature, we could find 4 great books within the Vedic literature. So what are they?
Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda.
Yes, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. And in each of that specific grade book, it composed with 4 main grade parts, namely Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, right? So we went through the Samhitas, Brahmanas, and Aranyakas so far, and we are left with the Upanishads. Right. So when we were discussing all these 4 parts, we for the ease of understanding and based on their characteristics, attributed characteristics, we divided those 4 into 2 main categories, namely Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Right. So Samhitas and Brahmanas are belonging to Karma Kanda. Why do we call them as Karma Kanda? Because it merely talks about the temporal life, about the specific life, right? So when we then the second part is the Jnana Kanda, where the Aranyakas and Upanishads, these 2 are belonging to the Jnana Kanda, and it talks about the liberating wisdom far more than the temporal life and basically spiritual knowledge. Right. So transcendental conditions are talking within the Jnana Kanda. Right. Right. So Aranyakas and Upanishads. And during last session, we finished discussing Aranyakas. And we have to discuss about the Upanishads, right? So Vedic religion is a very deep religion and literature to understand. We are not going to learn all the concepts and the religious facts which are included in the Vedic religion. Rather, we are going to have a basic idea about the specific religion, right? So before moving into the our topic, which is the Upanishads, let's look at another important topic, which is the importance of Upasana for the realization of Atma. Right, so importance of Upasana. Right, so this specific term Upasana we came across when we were discussing our last session. Upasana, what is the meaning of Upasana? Upasana stands for meditation, contemplation. Upasana is meditation. Purely the meaning of upasana is meditation, right? So the importance of meditation in order to realize one's own soul, in order to realize the understand the liberating wisdom. Simply we could say importance of meditation to attain the Upanishads. Right, so let's look at what is according to our teachings of Aranyakas, the importance of meditation to understand or to realize the Atman is as follows, right? So when Aranyakas is purely the people who we identified them as the tapas or austerity. We discussed that also. Aranyakas, the people who gave up everything and went to the forest and isolated themselves in order to contemplate and in order to realize and identify their own soul, right? So tapas is all about meditating or contemplating. Right, so what they did was they meditated and contemplated, right? So according to the teachings of Aranyakas, it says that tapas or austerity, it leads to shraddha. It helps to attain shraddha. Shraddha, we could simply say that shraddha is faith, right? Faith. And shraddha would leads to helps to produce sharp memory. Shraddha will help to produce sharp memory, and in turn, the sharp memory would bring peace in mind, peace in chitta. Chitta is peace in mind, right? And ultimately, by having the peace in mind, it would help a specific person to understand or to realize his or her own Atman, his or her own soul. Right, so this is how the Aranyakas have introduced the importance of austerity or tapas. Right, so tapas or austerity. Within the tapas or austerity, it is what they purely do is meditate. Right, so when they meditate continuously, it leads to gain shraddha. Right, then shraddha helps to produce sharp memory. Thereby, in return, it will bring peace in mind. Right, so once the peace in mind is gained, it will help to realize the Atman. It will help them to realize Atman. And apart from that, Aranyakas teaches that the tapas, austerity or contemplating, would remove all the dirt from sense, all the dirt from mind. Tapas would also helps to reduce or to remove dirt from all the dirt from the mind, where it purifies the mind. It would, tapas or meditations would purify one's mind, right? So that is how they talk about the upasana, the importance of upasana for the in order to gain the to identify one's soul and also to purify the mind, right? So according to the Vedic religion, the ultimate truth or the highest goal that one person could achieve is the Upanishad. Right, so the culmination point of the Vedic religion is the Upanishads, right? So, and also it indicates that they believe that the ultimate truth or the Upanishad is something beyond the upasana, right? Something beyond the meditational process. Even though the meditational process helps to gain upasana, purely only within the upasana, they could not achieve Upanishads, right? Upasana is only shows the way to gain the Upanishad. The meditation would shows the path. It is like the path to achieve the Upanishads, right? So when we were discussing about Aranyakas paved the path to Upanishads. Likewise, by doing or practicing by only practicing meditations and contemplating, they could not achieve the Upanishads. Rather, it shows the path to Upanishads. Meditations shows the path to Upanishads. And they further indicate that, they further talks that the highest truth, which is the Upanishad, is realized through a concept called Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana. Highest truth is realized through Nididhyasana. It is what? The intuition, one's intuition, right? So highest truth could be achieved by intuition, basically through intuition. The meditations or tapas or austerity helps to, it shows the path to gain the Upanishad, but highest truth could be realized through the Nididhyasana, right? Nididhyasana or intuition, through intuition, right? That is all about the importance of meditation or upasana to realize the one's own Atma, right? So if I go through it again, so according to Aranyakas, tapas or austerity plays a vital role. So with the whenever they do the practicing tapas or austerity, what they merely do is they meditate and contemplate. By meditating or contemplating or austerity, it leads to Shraddha. Thereby Shraddha will help to produce sharp memory, and thereby it brings peace in Chitta, right? Peace in mind, and peace in mind would help the people to realize their own soul, right? And also apart from that, the tapas or austerity helps to remove all the dirt from the mind, or it purifies the mind, right? So the meditations or contemplations would show is the path to it is just the path to identify the Upanishads. We could not exactly say by only having meditation, practicing meditations, that one could achieve the Upanishads. It just shows the path, right? So in order to achieve the highest truth, in order to attain the Upanishad, there was a concept, there was a path called Nididhyasana, right? Nididhyasana, and simply we could say that as intuition. Through intuition, one person could attain the Upanishads, and basically purely based on the meditation actually helps to gain the Upanishad, but it is not the only way, right? It is not the only way. Rather, in order to attain the Upanishads, they have to practice Nididhyasana or intuition. The meditations just pave the path to attain the Upanishads, right? So just go through that, you will understand. And this is the importance of meditation to realize one's own Atma or soul, according to the Vedic religion, right? So now let's move into the early Upanishads. Let's move into the early Upanishads, right? The Upanishads, right? So if we take it as a time phrase, 700 to 600, in between 700 to 600 BCE, right? So far we discussed that the Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Those are the 4 parts that we could find within the 4 great books, right? So earlier we studied that, we learned that to the Brahmans, the Aranyakas was tucked. The Samhitas and Brahmanas were composed previously, and to the and to those Samhitas and Brahmanas, Aranyakas were attached later. And to the Aranyakas later on, they attached Upanishads. That's how we learned, right? So this is an entire literature, right? This is a vast literature, and even though we learned that they attached continuously to the Samhitas and Brahmanas, later on Aranyakas were attached to the Aranyakas, then later on Upanishads were attached, right? So even though we learned, in that way, actually it was the way that it happened, but even though we could, as a whole literature, we could not exactly say that these treatises are distinctional as separate treatises. They are not, actually they all are whole one literature. Even though we learned in that way, they whole talk about one literature, which is the Vedic religion, right? So because basically in some cases, same points are discussed in all four parts, right? Same points are discussed in all four parts. Therefore, we could not separate them sharply into four cases. Rather, we could say that this is a specific literature which was gradually and grew up over the time. This is a specific literature which was gradually developed over the time. We could see a kind of development over the time where to the Samhitas and Brahmanas, Aranyakas were tacked, and later on the Upanishads were tacked into the Aranyakas. Right? It was gradually developed. Even though we could find four distinctional phases, we could not exactly say that those are separated from each and every one, because those they all are combined as a one literature. They all are combined as one literature, right? So that is all about the how this specific literature was made, right? So now let's move into our topic, which is the Upanishads, right? This is the culmination or end part of the Vedic literature, culmination or end part of the Vedic literature, right? So Upanishad, as we learned earlier, Upanishad is merely talk about spiritual knowledge, liberating wisdom, spiritual knowledge or liberating wisdom, right? So it is the end or final, or as we could say that culmination part of the Veda, culmination part of the Vedic religion. Right, so if we take the Upanishads as a if we take the Upanishad collectively, this part could be identified as another name called Vedanta. Vedanta, we could identify it as Vedanta, right? So now let's look at how the term Upanishad was given, how the term Upanishad was derived, right? So if we take the Upanishad, if we take the entire word, we could divide it into three phases: Upa, Ni, Sad, right? So the meaning of Upa is near, and Ni is down, right? Sad means sit, right? So simply we could say that sit down near, right? So they why do they given this kind of name for this specific religion, right? So specific part, right? So sit down near. Within the ancient India, the knowledge of Upanishad. So Upanishad and both Aranyakas and Upanishad was identified as a higher knowledge. We will talk about it later, right? So Upanishad was given to or imparted to the students who spent considerable time with their teachers, right? So, and they have to prove their sincerity beyond doubt. They should be sincere to their teachers, and they need to spend considerable time with their teachers, right? So once the selection was done, once they prove that they are sincere enough for their teachers, and also once they spend considerable time. I think someone's microphone is on. Okay. Right, thank you. So once they, in order to learn the Upanishad, the students have to spend considerable time with their teachers, right? And also they need to prove their sincerity without no doubt, right? So once the selection was done, once they spent a considerable time with their teachers, and once they prove their sincerity to their teachers, those students were allowed to approach the teachers and receive this doctrine from the teachers directly, right? So since that, students had to sit down near the teachers and listen them carefully, right? They need to be with teachers. They had to sit near the teachers in order to learn this religion or learn this doctrine. Thereby, the word Upanishad became vogue. That is how the name Upanishad was given to this specific religion, right? They need to sit down near their teachers for a considerable time, and and this specific doctrine was given to those who have the need, only for those who need to learn that religion, right? So when we were discussing about the all these four phases, only few people came into the forest to have aranyakas, to lead a life within aranyakas, to contemplate, to meditate, right? Not all the people who lived within the society came to the forest, right? They all didn't come to the forest. Rather, only the people who had the eager to learn about the spiritual knowledge, they came into the forest and they contemplated, they meditated, right? So, and when it comes to the Upanishad, the doctrine was given only for those who had the eager to learn this specific doctrine. Thereby, those students had to sit by the teachers for a long time. Thereby, the name Upanishad was given to this specific doctrine, right? And also, when we talk about the Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, the knowledge contained within these four phases could be divided into two main categories. Actually, this is not a very well-known division, rather based on their knowledge. Samhitas and Brahmanas are identified as lower knowledge. Samhitas and Brahmanas are identified, the knowledge contained within the Samhitas and Brahmanas, we could identify those knowledge, that specific knowledge, as lower knowledge, right? So the knowledge contained within the Aranyakas and Upanishads is identified as higher knowledge. So why it is divided in that way, right? So let's look at why it is divided as a higher knowledge and lower knowledge, right? So Samhitas and Brahmanas, right? So within the Samhitas and Brahmanas, all the there were hymns and the way how to the various sacrificial performances were introduced within the society, and those the knowledge which were included within the Samhitas and Brahmanas were mainly to perform rituals and to obtain just material gains, right? Samhitas and Brahmanas, the knowledge within the Samhitas and Brahmanas were used to gain material, to have material gains and personal favors from several deities, several divinities, right? So, to only for this specific life, especially to gain material gains and personal favors, right? So thereby, Samhitas and Brahmanas, they identify it as lower knowledge, right? So when it comes to the Aranyakas and especially the Upanishads, it is identified as higher knowledge, right? So why it is identified as higher knowledge? Because it deals with the both the Aranyakas and Upanishads deals with the one's understanding and realizing one's self, liberating wisdom, spiritual advancement, and transcendental status. Specifically, transcendental, it basically talks about and wanted to identify and realize the transcendental, attain the transcendental status. Due to that fact, the Upanishads and Aranyakas, basically, actually the Upanishads, both the Aranyakas and Upanishads, basically the Upanishad is identified as the higher knowledge, right? As it talks about the spiritual knowledge or transcendental status, right? Right. So the lower knowledge and higher knowledge. Lower knowledge talks about the Samhitas and Brahmanas, because those are rituals and several performances which were used to, this specific knowledge which were included within the Samhitas and Brahmanas were used to obtain material gains for this specific life. Thereby, those two were identified as lower knowledge. Right? But when it comes to the Upanishads and Aranyakas, they talks about the spiritual advancements and liberating wisdom, transcendental status, right? So due to that fact, this knowledge, the knowledge which were composed within the Aranyakas and Upanishads were identified as higher knowledge, identified as higher knowledge, right? Right. So, and also another point, from the earliest time onwards, the Upanishad could attract the attention of Upanishad could due to as it maintain a liberating wisdom and spiritual, as it contain importance of liberating wisdom and spiritual advancements. From the earliest times onwards, Upanishad, the specific part of this religion, could attract the attention of various religious, various scholars, various religions and schools of philosophies. It could attract their attention due to the importance of this specific part, Upanishads. Right, rather than practicing several sacrificial ceremonies, giving oblations to deities and worshipping deities and believing in those deities, this actually Upanishads could be identified as a major turning point in the development of Indian thought. Right, Vedic, the Upanishad could be identified as a major turning point, right? So rather than believing in those gods and again looking for material gains, this basically talks about spiritual advancements, right? Liberating wisdom. Thereby, due to this fact, it could seek the attention, it attracted the attention of various scholars from all over the world, and also several schools of philosophies. And this could be identified, apart from that, this could be identified as a major turning point within the development of Indian thought, right? So there are several concepts within the Upanishads. We will be looking about those concepts within our next lecture, and it talks about various subjects. If we take a Upanishad as a whole, it talks about several subjects such as nature of Brahman, the ideal human conduct, the practice of yoga, nature of the true knowledge and ignorance. Likewise, the Upanishads talks about several topics, several subjects, right? So if we take the Upanishad as a whole, it significantly emphasizes on meditation, mystical experience, and philosophical interpretation, right? So if we take the Upanishad as a whole, it significantly emphasizes on meditations, mystical experiences, as well as philosophical interpretations, right? So we will be discussing about the concepts, the basic and main concepts which are discussed within the Upanishads in our later lessons, right? Right. So now let's look at the differences, the main differences in between the early Vedic religion and the Upanishadic age. Early Vedic religion and the Upanishadic age. Then we'll move into the concepts of the Upanishads. Right. So first look at the differences between the early Vedic religions which were prevailed during the early Vedic period and the Upanishadic ages, right? We will discuss them one by one, right? So if you take the early Vedic religion, we could identify it as polytheism. Polytheism, right? So what do we mean by polytheism? Polytheism is where believing in or worshipping more than one god, more than one god. Right. So hope you can remember when we were discussing about the early Vedic religions, they actually worship in several. We discussed about plenty of gods. God Indra, God Vayu, God Surya. Likewise, we discussed about plenty of gods. Right. So the early Vedic religion, due to that fact, the concept was given polytheism, where they believed and worshipped more than one god. Right. So when it comes to the Upanishadic age, the monism, the concept, we could identify it as monism. Right. So what do we mean by monism? When it comes to the Upanishadic age, the people who belong to the specific phase, they do not focus in gods. They do not focus in gods. Rather, they concentrated about whatever within the matter and mind. They concentrated about themselves, their minds. They did not worship or they did not believe in gods. Rather, they always wanted to contemplate. They always wanted to meditate and understand their own soul, right? To gain liberating wisdom, right? So polytheism and monism, right? So let's look at another difference which prevailed during two phases. If you take the central practice within the early Vedic religion was sacrifice, right? So it is obvious, we discussed that if we heard the word Vedic religion, it is purely based on sacrifices. Right. So there are several sacrificial ceremonies, plenty of sacrificial offerings were there. Right. So the central practice within the religion, within the early Vedic phase, was the sacrifice. Right. So, but when it comes to the Upanishadic age, they use the sacrificial symbolism to identify or to interpret the human life. Right. So hope you can remember, we discussed that when it comes to the Upanishadic and Aranikas and Upanishadic, the people were fed up with the sacrificial offerings. People were fed up with the sacrificial ceremonies and all. They wanted to find the actual truth, the meaning behind the sacrificial offerings. They wanted to find the meaning and the truth behind the sacrificial ceremonies, right? So even though the central practice of the religion earlier was sacrifice, when it comes to the Upanishadic age, sacrificial symbolism, these sacrifices were used to interpret the human life and cosmological structures when it comes to the Upanishadic age, right? So let's trace another difference. If we take the focal duty within the religion, in order to attain the highest level of the attainment, the focal duty was the religious rites and rituals within the early Vedic religion. What they believed and they always practiced religious rites and rituals, right? So whenever they had a problem, they only believed in performing sacrificial offerings, right? So but the the focal duty was to perform religious sacrificial offerings, right? But when it comes to the Upanishadic age, they did not, they were like, the sacrificial offerings are irrelevant. Actually, when it comes to the Aranikas and Upanishads, they gave up all the sacrificial offerings. Rather, they thought that meditations or contemplating is the central ritual practice. They identified the meditation or contemplations as the central ritual practice, right? So during the early Vedic phase, the main or the focal duty within the religion, they identify it as the religious rites and ritual, practicing or performing religious rites and rituals very accurately, right? But when it comes to the Upanishadic age, the religious sacrificial offerings were gave up, and they thought that they are irrelevant to achieve the liberation. Rather, they thought that the central ritual practice or the focal duty is to contemplate or to meditate, right? When it comes to the Upanishadic age, right? So early Vedic religion is expressed in ritual texts, hymns, exegesis to the texts, right? So the religion is expressed in ritual texts and hymns. And within the Upanishadic, if we talk about the Upanishadic age, the religious is expressed in spiritual discourses, discussions. The disciples and the gurus, we identified them as gurus, who the teachers, right? They, in between them, they had discussions about this specific religion, right? The spiritual discourses, they had debates, right? So, and teachings of Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya is like yoga. For we could give an example for Brahma Vidya is yoga. You know how to breathe, concentrate, breathe in a the very accurate manner, right? So the religion is expressed in spiritual discourses, discussions, and debates within the Upanishadic age, and the religion is expressed in ritual texts, hymns, and their exegesis within the early Vedic religion. And also, if we take the content of the Brahminical education, we could identify the content within ritual texts, ritual texts, Vedic hymns, commentaries, and etc. But when it comes to the central content of the Upanishadic sages, learning of upasana, learning of meditations, central content was to learn meditations of this specific religion. The central content of the early Vedic religion was to learn about Vedic hymns, Vedic rituals, and etc. Right? And also, if we talk about the highest religious role within the early Vedic religion, ritual priesthoods, Brahmanas, they took the highest position within the society, right? Religious priesthood. And when it comes to the Upanishadic period, highest form of religious life is the asceticism, or contemplating life, right? When it comes to the Upanishadic age. And when it comes to, when we talk about the early Vedic religion, the priests or Brahmins were, they control the entire society. It's like the priest sacrificial and teaching function in a community. They were the highest layer within the society, and all the other society was with them, and they rule the entire society, right? The Brahmins rule the entire society, right? So when it comes to the Upanishadic age or the Upanishadic phase, the teachers were identified as gurus, and they were they had a teaching function with disciples. Their followers were identified as disciples. Gurus and the followers were identified as disciples, right? So within the early Vedic religion, if you look at what is the final attainment of this specific religion, to reborn in heavens with the gods and their ancestors. What they finally want to get is they want to their final attainment is to reborn in heavens with the gods who they believed and with their ancestors. But when it comes to the Upanishadic period, the final attainment is to get moksha. They believed they wanted to get moksha, or to release from the cycle of rebirth. They wanted to release from the cycle of rebirth, right? And main focus, the final difference that we are going to study today is main focus. Within the early Vedic religion, they wanted to interpret the early Vedic religion, the religious learning on the interpretation of the Vedic hymns and the ritual texts. They wanted to always talk about the religious hymns or practice sacrificial offerings. And main focus when it comes to the Upanishadic age, the main focus was to learning psychological, metaphysical, and cosmological analysis, to learn about the liberating wisdom, right? So those are the distinctions. Those are the differences that we could find within the early Vedic religion and the Upanishadic period, right? So, we discussed it in a, I have given it you as a table, right? So, but I will give you a question. Once you were given an essay question to write, you have to don't try to write whatever I have given in the note, rather try to describe it in your own words, right? So take down a question for homework. Discuss the differences between early Vedic religion and Upanishadic period, Upanishadic religion. Right, so the question is given as discuss the differences, right? So you will be getting essay questions for your exam, right? So once you were given discuss, you have to describe that whatever you were asked to, right? So if you, when the question is given as discuss, you can't draw a table and mark the answers as 1, 2, 3, 4. Rather, you have to write it as an essay, right? Once it is given as to discuss, as we are in a degree level now, so you have to be more professional, and you have to discuss or describe it in your own words, right? You have to describe it in your own words, right? So I'm planning to mark this question from 10, right? I will be give you a marking. So try to write it as an essay and submit the answers on or before the next class. Okay, on or before 15th of March. On or before 15th of March, I will mark this question, and because I want you to practice for your exam, because you will be given essay questions for the exam. Try to describe the answer in your own words, right? Try to describe it in your own words, right? So as we have some time left, we will I will move into the next part. We will discuss some main concepts within the one or two concepts which are included within the Upanishads, right? Right. So when we talk about the Upanishad is all about the asceticism. Upanishad is all about asceticism, right? So, and asceticism in the sense it talks about they have strict senses of self-discipline and self-denial. Self-discipline and self-denial. Strict sense in self-discipline and self-denial, right? So according to the Upanishad thinkers, they believe that the main practice is to having the asceticism by being they all ascetics. Their main practice was to meditate or contemplate, as we so far discussed. So they thought that the meditations or that specific, they identified the disciplined meditation as a ritual practice. Within the Upanishads, they identify the disciplined meditation as a ritual practice, which could produce same results as the physical sacrifices. Having deep disciplined meditation, they believed that practicing disciplined meditation could produce the same result as the physical sacrifices, right? So when we were discussing about the Samhitas and Brahmanas, they had physical sacrifices. They sacrificed several oblations to gods, right? Sacrificed animals. They performed several yagas. They performed several sacrificial ceremonies. Those were physical sacrifices. But when it comes to the Upanishads, they were strict. They had strict sense of self-discipline and self-denial. They all were ascetics, and they mainly focused on meditations, right? So they believed that the Upanishadic thinkers believed that disciplined meditations could produce. They identified the disciplined meditations as a ritual practice, and they believed that the specific disciplined meditation could produce same results as the physical sacrifices, right? These disciplined meditations could produce same results as the physical sacrifices, right? So, and also, apart from that, they believed that extreme asceticism, they believed in extreme asceticism, and they believed that these extreme asceticism could help to escape from the continual and reincarnation, continual rebirth, right? The cycle of rebirth, right? So they believed that by practicing extreme asceticism, by practicing extreme meditations and extreme asceticism, they could escape from the continual reincarnation, right? So that is what they believe. One of the major concepts that we could find within the Upanishads. They believed in extreme, the Upanishad thinkers, they believed in extreme asceticism, and they further believed that by practicing extreme asceticism, they could escape from continual reincarnation. They could escape from continual reincarnation, right? So, and also they had the Upanishad thinkers had several some other beliefs as well, right? So they identified, they believed that each and every individual within this specific world, they are parts of the world. They are each and every individual, they identify the each and every individual as a soul, as a soul, and they with these individual souls, the world is made. World is made with these individual souls. Each and every soul is a part of this parts of this world, right? So the world is constituted with single souls, single individual souls, and these souls, these human beings, always constantly trying to seek to freedom from their mortal prison, and they are trying to get rid from the wheel of life, right? So the entire world is consisted with single human beings, and these human beings are trying to seek freedom from this wheel of life. These individuals are trying to get rid from the wheel of life, right? So in order to get rid, so what do we what is the word for get the freedom? To gain moksha, according to them, to gain moksha. In order to gain moksha, these individual souls have to undergo long painful series of bodily reincarnations and transmigrations. It is not to gaining moksha is not an easy process. Rather, it is very painful process where they have to undergo bodily reincarnations and transmigrations, right? Bodily reincarnations and transmigrations, right? So they believe that one single person or human being is made up with the body, the body, and the soul is imprisoned within that body, right? Soul is imprisoned within that body, and the good or bad deeds, their body and their soul is determined by the tally of good and bad deeds of their previous lives. Their body and soul is predetermined by the tally of good and bad deeds from their previous lives. Whatever they get, good or bad, it was determined by their previous karma. We could simply say that whatever they receive within this specific life is as a result of, it is predetermined by whatever they did, good or bad, within their previous lives, right? So the rewards and punishments work automatically, and according to the Upanishad thinkers, there is no god. There is no god to judge the people, or they could not get petition for the forgiveness for sin. Rather, each and every individual was responsible for their own destiny. Each and every individual is responsible for their own destiny. Rather, their destiny was predetermined by the good or bad deeds they have done within their previous lives, right? No god is there to judge the people, to give petitions for forgiveness, right? So the each and every individual is responsible for their own destiny. No god is there to judge each and every individual. Rather, their destiny was predetermined by their own good or bad acts, or by their own karma during their previous lives, right? So good deeds, according to the Upanishad thinkers, good deeds leads for better future life, right? So the bad deeds would attract the worst future life. That is how they believe, right? So the that is about several concepts what the Upanishadic thinkers believed, how the entire world is made, how the each and individual souls are made up with, right? So if we go through it very quickly, the Upanishadic this specific doctrine is basically based on asceticism, right? They have strict practices on self-discipline and self-denial, right? So they believe that the disciplined meditation would produce same results as the physical sacrifices, right? So due to that fact, they believed in extreme asceticism, and extreme asceticism would help to escape from the continual reincarnation, right? So and if we take the world as a whole, the entire world is constituted with single human beings, right? Single souls, and each and everybody who live within this specific world are responsible for their own, or for his or her own destiny. No other person is responsible for that. He or she is strongly responsible for their own destiny, right? No other god or no other one could determine their destiny. How their destiny was predetermined based on their karma, good or bad deeds within whatever they did within their previous lives, right? So good deeds would lead to have a better life, or bad deeds or evil deeds would lead to get a worse future life, right? So that is all about the concepts that we are going, as we are running out of time. I'm not going to talk about more concepts. Anyway, I will go through this concept again. So what we discussed today, and I think we could finish the entire note by next week, right? So answer the question which I gave you, and we will be having our next class on 15th, right? Right. So, okay. Email me your answers, and if you have any questions, just drop me an email. Right. So thank you for joining with me, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
much.
Good night.
Nice.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Yeah.